Okay, great. Okay, well, welcome everyone to I think our second last one for this year. I guess we'll have to discuss what we're doing over the summer, but we'll just carry on from there. And I will be able to post this sometime over the weekend. We were planning on going away camping, but as Lorene was saying, with all the weather that we're having, I thought we're just gonna stay home. Yeah, so I'll be home to be able to do things. So welcome. We were going to try and do some practical things today, and then there's some great questions as well that were posted on the Google Doc. So we'll work through those. And I think I had asked too if anyone had something that you wanted to share. A success that you had this week or over the last month even that you want to share with us, go for it. Why don't we do that first, and then we can delve into the questions and talk about those.
Can I ask Boyan, if because you posted a great video recently of Sneaky Sam, and I just wondered, I mean, that's incredibly fun and successful. I was just wondering if you could tell us about the process of helping her make the changes that she did the second time, and maybe, I don't know if everybody's seen it, maybe you can just describe what it is, and then, yeah.
So actually, I can't take that credit because I think her father really did a lot of the guiding. These, so I teach two girls whose father is a very accomplished pianist. But the father and the girls, all of them are very introverted in character, and the oldest is especially the shyest, and she gets very easily upset if I correct her anything. So between that family and I, we've gotten into like our lessons are, I'm not really focused on like teaching new stuff. Like I am more there just kind of to cheerlead them a little bit, because I know the dad could guide them a lot. I have a practice sheet that I post in one of the softwares that I use, and the girls have been super diligent since February when we started it, and that also has a function of sharing videos, which is where they post things. And so once they learn something, and of course I suggest repertoires, and I suggest when they play, I give them lots of compliments, and I suggest maybe one or two ideas to work on each week. And the idea of changing something wasn't super fun. Like I actually, when I introduced it, they were just like quiet, and so I didn't think that they would do very much with it. But the Sneaky Sam starts with the minor triad, and so I had asked her to try with major triad once. I had her chant the rhythm pattern, and she said ba 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 ba, and I said, can you give it like a ba 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 ba, or can you play those three notes but in a different direction? So I didn't actually go through the whole piece with her, but I gave her some ideas, and I said, find some places where you might like to do things like this, and then they did the rest. And so really, it's not I can't take credit for that, but that's basically how I've been introducing things to that family, because they feel more comfortable kind of being explorative and experimenting with it. I think the girls are really sensitive in not sharing their mistakes or their learning process with me. And so the anything that feels new, I just kind of like mention and say, oh, go do it. And then if they give it a little bit of try, then I say, wow, that was really awesome. Maybe do this. It's always been like that. And so, yeah, but I was pretty impressed, and I was just really happy to see the video, because at the end she added a tremolo, and I think it's something that obviously the father and the daughter had talked about, because I can see that she looked up to him because he was taping, and then she had this like big smile, and I was like, oh, you really enjoyed that process. And so yeah, it was something of a gain. Thank you for asking.
It was really fun because I have a student playing it as well, and I would say probably I have more challenge trying to get them to play it in its original form first and then, but I showed the video to him yesterday of your student and he got really excited because he tends to always play the rhythm like this anyway. Right, he always is making the rhythm up anyway. But it was really fun. It got him really like excited that, oh, I can do this. And then he did all kinds of crazy things. I'm not sure it's very fluent, but at least he's like thinking about the different things you can do. So yeah, it was very fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I think some of the things that I don't really know when it kind of triggers for them. But I can see that it starts pretty young. I was thinking when Greg asked about recent successes, I have a boy who just turned 5, and he's in a group that's kind of nearing the end of Keyboard Games B, and we're just ordering book 1. And so the last piece in Keyboard Games B is Flint Street Boogie. And so he had learned that for me. And so he was going to play. Our lessons are only 15 minutes because we do 25 minutes group, and then we do 15-minute individual. And so I asked him to play something that he practiced this week. And then he was trying to do a mashup between Flint Street Boogie and The Pilgrims, which is 8 bars long. Flint Street Boogie is 12 bars long. But obviously this wasn't something that he had done during their practice during the week, because the dad was like, that's new. And he's trying to do it with 2 hands. So he's like all clawing and it's not very good. And I thought he was struggling, but I kind of let him do it. And then it ended with the Flint Street Boogie. And I thought, oh, maybe it's no longer a mashup. But he said, no, a Flint Street Boogie is longer. So that's why it ended with Flint Street Boogie. And his dad, who knows how to play and who's been guiding him his practices, he's flipping pages counting bars. and the boy's like, no, the Pilgrims is shorter, this is longer. And so I thought, what about the Flint Street Boogie and the Lowdown Boogie? Are they the same in length, or is one of them longer than the other? And again, the dad's flipping pages trying to count bar numbers, and he's just like, they're the same. And I thought, oh, like, it's not like I when I introduced the pieces or when we played, we counted bars or macrobeats or like none of those, but something in his processing kind of clicked. And I thought that was like very fascinating.
Great, thank you. Okay, others?
I'll share. Generally around this time of year, I have my students make up their own composition, and I've had quite a few who were stuck this week. They're like, I just don't know what to do. So I used this, and it was just really, really helpful. So I just thought we'll start with something familiar. So we did Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and what I had them do is do a phrase at a time, and then I had a conversation with that phrase. So I kind of demonstrated first. They played the first, 2 measures of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and then I had a conversation with that, and then they continued, and we went back and forth. And then I did that. I played the part that was familiar in its regular form of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then I had them improvise. And it just flowed so well. And some of them are better just with rhythm. So I just had them, change up the rhythm first of all. Just start with the rhythm and like even play between the tonic and dominant. And then they slowly got to change some of the melodic phrasing of it too. And it was a lot of fun. And I just showed them, I said, see, you can do this. Like even if you're having problems at home, just start with something that's familiar and just change it up and you can do it. So it was really fun having a conversation with a song that they were familiar with, right? And could easily play.
Thank you. Any others?
Maybe I'll just share about my thoughts about bass lines. I really, even just having to share at a webinar this week was just a reminder again how much harmonic understanding underpins everything that we do in music. And I really had thought about this years ago. When you want your students to make a beautiful cadence, like taper the end of the phrase, but I realized that my student wasn't really hearing the end of the phrase harmonically. Like it didn't make sense to them that we needed to be quiet at the end, right? Because they weren't necessarily hearing the underlying harmonies that that give us that feeling of tension and release. And so once I thought about that, then that really was what spurred me on, I think, to do even more like tonal pattern and understanding harmonies. But this week, my students are in sort of the place where they're being able to play through their pieces quite comfortably. So I've just been exploring having them even improvise with a phrase from their pieces. So, and this one was particularly fun. I'll just show you from the RCM 7. One of my students is playing the Lament by Gurlitt, and it's in G flat major. So it's tricky to read. And he struggled just a little bit really getting himself into G flat major. We just don't play in G flat major very much. So I've been using the Well-Tempered Readers from Maryland, which has a number of pieces in G flat major. So that's been really fun. But what we did yesterday was just explored the bass line for this. And it's good for keeping up your harmonic analysis, because you have to sort of think like, what is that chord? But it's basically what the chords do is it's one. It's this piece here. So the chords are G flat major and then D flat major, and then we've got a kind of I think it's subdominant but with some suspensions, and then this is the startling one. We've got B flat major at the end. And he loved that. So I said, first of all, just play the bass line. And then there's that B flat, which sort of feels like it should lead you to E flat minor, right? But anyway, so then he just played chord tones over top of that. And then I asked him to maybe add some passing tones or whatever. But anyway, by the end, he was able to really sort of play a very cool improvisation just based on those 4 chords. But it also changed the way he played the piece, because suddenly he really heard the significance of that B flat major chord, which comes right at the end of that phrase. So I just love that. It feels more important to me even than having them perform it well, right? Which is a nice satisfaction of, yes, we learned this piece and played it beautifully, but that deepening level of understanding, I realized that's what I'm really going for, is and excitement too. Like it just took it out of the realm of, yeah, I'm trying to play these notes correctly, and really listening and just being engaged in what he was doing. So
great. Anyone else? I had one yesterday, and actually I thought of you, Rochelle, because this is a question you had, and now to ask me how we got here, I'm not exactly sure I would be able to tell you. I'm just going to share my screen so you can see what the score. This is from book 3, Music Moves, and okay, everyone can see that. Right? Okay. So this was with my son yesterday. And so, of course, I said, did you go through the checklist? No, he didn't go through the checklist. So I said, okay, well, do you know what all of these mean? And I thought, okay, I just better double check. And so I did. And so then, singing the tonal pattern. So I said, okay, can you sing the tonal patterns here for me? So, he went... So, mi, and then fa, re, do, mi, so, and I thought, what is he doing? And I said, well, what are you singing? And then he goes, well, do, mi, so, and then he points to here. Oops. And I went, oh, so he could see that pattern. The do, mi, so, out of that with all those passing notes in there. And I thought, okay, how did we get to this place? So I've been trying to think of that for the rest of the day, how he knew that those were passing tones. I mean, he played this, so he played this, and we learned it, through audiation first, and then he is working on reading. So I wanted him to do the reading of the rhythm patterns, and then also the reading of the tonal patterns as we go through, and I just thought, it works. I mean, we have done lots of passing notes before, and we talk about that as we go along. But even in his reading, he was able to distinguish that those were passing notes. Those were not part of the essential tonal pattern. And I said, well, if you want to, you can include those, and then we can improvise on it. And we did. So it's something that I think it's just from playing and singing all those tonal patterns so many times and reading them, then, you're grabbing what are my essential tonal patterns. Yeah, and I mean, he would know he would have known that was the tonic anyways. Yeah. So I just found that interesting. So now I need to give more attention to how he actually got there, because to be honest, I'm not sure. It just naturally happened. Yeah. But because I know that was a question you had long ago. Yeah, Rochelle. And I thought, okay, I need to make sure that I share this tomorrow. Yeah. Good. Okay, anyone else? And then we can move on to the questions. Okay. We had a number here. Rochelle, I think I'm going to leave your first one for the end. Okay, because then we can spend more time on that if we need. So here, how to teach a piece that is not part of an MLT series. So repertoire piece, so not a simple folks tune with a few chords. And what is the learning process from an audiation let me reread that. What is the learning process from an audiation approach with pieces that involve harmonic progressions that students have not covered in LSAs? The floor is open. Feel free to share.
Maybe I'll just ask a follow-up question, Jana. In your example that you just gave, would that student have sort of known what those chords were before you do that? Like, how much do you play with bass lines with, chords that they're not familiar with?
Yeah, so one of the things that happens as I've gone through the Music Moves series is that when you get into book 3, this is I've realized an especially important moment, and the sooner they get there, the better. But Marilyn begins to introduce all of the triads in their shapes. So black, 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 white, black, white, and we talk about the categories of the triads. And then building on that, she has them do cadences, 1, 4, 5 cadences, pretty much in every key. At that point, they can start to do that if they're ready. So you could be limited. So what's happened is that they have established this really strong sense of what are the 1, 4, 5, and they've tried it in a lot of different keys. So then when they do come to repertoire in different keys, they have that sort of basis. So then even if they didn't know the function of the B flat major triad, which is sort of like a dominant of the relative minor, they don't necessarily have to have that theoretical vocabulary. They just know that, oh, that's a B flat major chord and that does not belong in G flat major, right? That we would not normally play that chord like that in G flat major. So, but this particular student has a deep interest in harmony. I think he could just talk about it all the time. And so I maybe designed that activity partly specifically for him because he gets really exhausted from just trying. He has very poor physical coordination, and so it takes him a long time to learn. He has some actually a physical delay. And so then when we start talking about chords like that, and any time he gets to improvise or compose, he's happy. So the lessons are look a lot like that. Like, oh, isn't that an amazing chord? Or let's find the rhythm patterns that are in there that, how does Kulau use that rhythm pattern there? Yeah, but the harmony, yeah, I was just reading your question again, because I think it's such I used to think when I first started out, okay, I don't want to introduce any repertoire to the student that is beyond their harmonic understanding or their rhythmic understanding. I actually don't think I don't think it hurts, and partly because I see Marilyn engaging younger students even in unusual meter movement or chanting unusual or uneven meter chants early on. I think the main thing is that you don't expect them necessarily to be independent in the learning process when you're working with something that's harmonically beyond it, but it's not going to. I'll give you one other quick example. I know this is not harmonic but rhythm. I have a student who again is very technically challenged. There's just some delays in hands together coordination and probably a little lack of practice, but her rhythm and her tonals, so she's actually far beyond the repertoire. And there's a little piece called Sunrise, I think. I can't remember. It's Nancy Telfer, or The Rising Sun or something. And it's the rhythm is doo-da, doo-da at the beginning. That is a rhythm pattern that I would not teach a student in the very first months unless I feel like I've moved through, just because it's going to feel always uncomfortable, even if they play it and they kind of get it. It's just not going to be something, even though the piece is physically easy to play, the rhythm pattern is not. So I would delay teaching that. But this student, because her rhythm LSAs, she's very advanced, then it was a piece of cake for her to learn it. And she felt so successful because then she did, and the rhythms so it's doo-da, doo-da, and then it's got doo-da-dee, doo-da-dee, and then doo-da-da-dee, doo-da-da-dee. So there's complicated rhythm patterns, and it was easy for her to do that. So I know that's not really answering your question, but I think about the level of repertoire you can really, we've got so much to choose from that you can pick and choose, right? So that it really is appropriate to the individual student where they're at, unless they're being, forced to learn something in school or in band or something that's challenging. And then I would do a little remedial help for them.
Yeah, this is helpful. Maybe just to rephrase the question a little bit, and thinking, I've seen a lot of demonstrations on teaching these short little folk tunes, or, when you work at the rhythm and you work at the tonal patterns, and then the students kind of just play it because they've sung it. They can do that. And I get that. And I love that process. But then when it comes to, and then, the reading, starts to happen, but you're teaching pieces beyond their reading level at the same time with repertoire. What is the process from your perspectives on how to teach those pieces? Like, are they also taught in those incremental ways where you go through all the rhythm patterns and the tonal patterns, or is there something else? Like, I just don't get kind of how to do those bigger pieces.
As I was reading this, I don't know, unless Jana, you had a piece you wanted to do, I thought, why don't we take a practical approach? And I've been working on the minuet with my son, the minuet in G major, and I thought, do we want to take a look at this and kind of go through how we would actually do this with a student and just do the first half? Like, would that be helpful to do that? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So it's this one. Okay, so that's all that it is. And so, again, I'm going to share my screen because then you can see, and then I'll get you to unmute because I'm going to ask you for answers as we go through this. Where are we? Here we are. Okay. So it's this. So, And I think one of the questions is, and I know that Jana and I were even talking about this, what do you teach first? Do you teach the melody or do you teach the harmony? And with my son, he wanted to learn this. He said, like, Dad, there's that one piece. It's, and he kind of sang it. And he said, like, would I be able to learn that? And I said, yeah, of course. And so then I made sure that I had it ready for his next lesson. Now, what I did is that I taught him, so the section A, I taught him the melody first here, because I wanted to still work on the harmony. Okay, so the A and the B. Because I was still sorry, I didn't have time, because he asked me the day of his lesson, and I thought, okay, I don't have time to really sit down and to go through, and I want a little bit more time to figure out exactly how am I going to approach this, and especially down here, we start to get, secondary dominance, we move into the key of D major, so do I want him to move into the key of D major, or do I want him to stay in G major, and we're just doing secondary dominance, how do I want to approach that? So the first thing that I did is I had to go through and figure out, okay, what is my harmony? Okay, and so I'm just going to get you guys to call this out as we go through. We're just going to do the A section. So here, what is this harmony? This measure. So we're in G, right? The equality of G. Okay, so as far as putting harmony to this, what would we put to the first measure? And you can just shout it out.
G.
Yeah. G, so that would be our tonic. Second measure?
Tonic,
Yeah, tonic. Okay, third measure?
subdominant,
Yeah, subdominant. Okay, fourth measure?
tonic,
Fifth measure?
dominant,
Sixth? This one? See, and the thing is, we're going through analyzing it. Okay, we're going through analyzing it visually. Ideally, we really should be analyzing it through our ears. So what is that? One,
Tonic.
our tonic. And then here,
Tonic.
now there's a couple of ways we could probably deal with this, but I went dominant. Nope. Yes, dominant, tonic, dominant. Okay, this measure is
Tonic.
tonic,
Tonic.
subdominant, tonic. Okay, here. Okay, I'm gonna play it, you tell me.
Dominant.
Yeah. It could also be subtonic if you want. Or leading note, the seventh, but we'll go with dominant. Okay, next measure.
Tonic.
And the next.
Subdominant to tonic or to dominant.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a choice here, right? Do we want this as our subtonic? Okay, so that would be our subdominant, I should say. Going to our dominant. No, sorry. Okay, my brain just froze. Yeah, so that will be our dominant to our tonic. Okay, so now, so at least we know what harmony we have, what the chord roots are. Then, as far as singing the melody, what would be our essential tonal patterns that we have here? So in measure 1, what would be our essential, our tonal pattern? We could even combine 1 and 2. Bum, bum, bum. Right, so do, So I could make that a 3-note pattern, or I could make it, if I wanted to, I could carry it on and do a 5-note pattern. So, do, mi, so, do. Right, so it's up to me if I want to make it a 5-note pattern or a 3-note pattern. Generally, we don't do anything more than 5 notes for a tonal pattern. Okay, measure 3. What would be our essential pitches? Pum, pum. Now I can either make that a 2, pum, pum, or I can go bum, 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 and make it 3. So again, that's a choice that I can make.
Okay.
Someone had a question?
Well, I just like how you're also including not just the I'll call them the intervals that are skips, but the ones that are passing through. It helps form the melody a lot better than just I guess I only understood that anything that was skipping or a greater interval than 2 than a second, that those were the tonal patterns. But when you include all the notes in the chord, that just really helps the student remember the whole structure of the melody and more of the notes in it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm catching what you're saying, Carol.
No, I think I agree. I can maybe explain because it took me years of muddling through this. Especially Marilyn gives a lot of examples of tonal patterns, and sometimes I was wondering, why are we singing mi, re, do, right? When that's kind of a mixed pattern. Like we're not. It's the question of, are the patterns always just the essential harmonic tonal patterns, or are they the skips in the music, right? So I think, Carol, that's what you're thinking of. And I think maybe what we're doing here is really looking for the essential patterns as connected to the harmonic structure. I do, when it comes to actually learning music and having them play something that's a big difficult leap that does move from one chord to the next, I will have them sing that pattern as well. So if it was a mixed pattern, it might be, like something where they go from like T up to La, right? Like a big pattern where they have to move quite far. I would also do that. But what she's saying, Greg, is you're pulling the patterns out of the passing tones, right? So that we're not just looking for just the leaps. And that just makes a lot of sense to
but thank you, Jana. Yes, but it also helps them remember the melody more. Like it's not just like 2 isolated. They're not necessarily isolated notes, but it actually forms the melody in their brain. The way if you would just sing through all those that you've put through, there's the whole structure of the melody right there. That's easier to remember than just 2 notes here and 2 notes there.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, and that's why I was doing that. Yeah, it's because I really wanted to base it on the harmony, and yeah, definitely you can add in those passing tones, and we would talk about them as being passing tones, and that might be something I would even do in another lesson. But I know for his first lesson, I just pulled out these essential ones so that he knew the melody because he heard it many, many times, and so I had that going for me. I didn't have to do the acculturation process on this, so that we could just kind of dive into it. And I don't think there would be anything wrong in including the passing notes if you're wanting to. I know I just really wanted to get a strong harmonic foundation going, and the passing notes will fill in the gaps. Yeah, and so then go ahead.
So I was just going to ask, at this point when you're teaching this, have the students done sight reading of those patterns or note reading in G major? What are the students doing? What are they discovering, and what are you sort of showing them with this?
I didn't show him anything.
So they don't see the notes.
No, he has a copy of the music in front of him, but I don't point to anything in the music. It's just there. It's just notes on the page. And so then we sang that. So I got him to sing the tonal patterns. So I said, okay, I want you to sing. So I went bum bum bum, you know, and then he would go so do mi, and then I'd say, okay, now can you play that? Because he would play it. He knew we were in G. And then I said, okay, now let's go. And I know this is really high, but then I end up saying, okay, now let's go on. Okay, and la fa la la fa la. And so then he sang it, and then can you play that? So then I would get him to play it in the area that we did it. So I kind of went through and just grabbed those ones, and I would work phrase by phrase. And even with this, I know when it came to working on it, I just did it in 4 measure groups. You know, this is the first half, and then I went through, this is the second half. And then we compared. So then what I ended up doing, we sang the tonal patterns, and then we chanted the rhythm patterns. So what are your rhythm patterns? And so in this case, I can actually give them to him to be a little bit longer. Do da ta dee ta do da dee, do da ta dee ta do da dee. So we made that as our first rhythm pattern. Now our second one, do da ta dee ta do da ta dee ta do da ta dee ta do. Same or different? Well, it's different. And so then, I mean, I don't mark this on his, I'm just doing it for you. Okay? And then we go through the second phrase, doing the exact same thing, the rhythm patterns. So we'll do that, and then I'll say, okay, now let's play it. Let's learn it. And so then I just taught it to him by rote. Okay, so this is our tonic. So I just did that, and then he did it, and then he played it. And then let's put those two together. That's our first phrase. Can we do the whole first phrase? Sorry. And then we went on to the next one. Here. So this, I did say, we have a little sequence here. Starting on the dominant. So it's just a stepwise motion, and then, so that they can hear that that's an actual sequence. Okay, and so then we went through that. So I just taught him, so we started this last week. So I only taught him the melody of section A. And then partway through the week, he came and he said, so can I read and learn the left hand? And I said, no. Because I said, I want you to know what the harmony is before we go through and before you add the left hand. So then that's exactly what we did yesterday in this lesson. So when I'm talking about the harmony, I'm only talking about the chord roots. So I'm going to just put these in red. Okay, actually, to save time, I'm going to flip to my own copy. Okay, so what I've done here, I've just put in red the chord roots, what the chord roots are. And so then we sing that, and we sing it by phrase. So what we're doing is we're going 1, 1, 4, 1. So we learned the first phrase, the first half of the first phrase, and then we went to the second one. So, do, so, do, so. And we went through it that way. Then we put it together. And so then I had him play it as we sang it. And then this week, what he's doing is he is only doing this. So he's just playing the chord roots with the melody. And then I said, if once you get comfortable, then you can add in the chords and play the full chord with the melody. And that's exactly what, and then he started to do that in the lesson. And then, so then he'll work on that this week. Then we'll start learning section B, the melody, and then we're going to start learning the left hand as is for the section A. And why I want him to know what the harmony is because then later he's going to be able to improvise on this. But you have, in order to be able to improvise on it, you have to know what the harmony is. And so then, and I've done this with other pieces with him as well. We do the chord roots and then we learn the left hand as written. And it's not a problem because they understand, right? That here, I mean, the A we're just going to treat as a passing note. This is just, the B is just another note of my tonic chord, right? C is the root, okay, of my subdominant. B is just another chord tone of my tonic. A, right, is just another chord tone of my dominant seventh. And then I go to G, which is my root. So it's ending on the root, that phrase. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's great. I just don't like, it's such a huge shift to teach this way. I think it's a great shift and I'm working hard at making it. One of the things that I feel is tricky, especially having students at a variety of levels who don't have this background, but shifting to what is the expectation of what they do at home. And I'm sensing that with your teaching, it's much more that they play with the pieces at home and do basically reinforce what's been done in a lesson, not that they go home and try to do more as far as learning more of the piece, instead changing it in many ways and improvising with it. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, it is for me. I want them to be able to deepen what we have done in the lesson. Yeah, so that when they come back, they know it. Like, I mean, even that, the little prelude in C, right? I mean, so that's a grade 5 piece. So, I mean, with my son, we started it. So he learned that within, I think five lessons, but we had Easter break in there. So in 6 weeks, he learned it to where if he had to play it for a recital, it would be respectable. It wouldn't be like an 88 on an exam, but it would be in the lower 80s, type of thing. That if he had to do it, he could. Now we're just kind of fine tuning it a little bit more if we can. But what ends up happening is because they learn the articulation, they're learning the articulation and the tempo as they learn the piece. And that's one thing that I absolutely love about this. I never have to teach them the articulation. Well, I shouldn't say that. Every now and again, there'll be something that they miss. So then I just say, okay, listen. And I get them to play it for me. And so they listen and then they get the articulation. They hear the difference. But I find that it saves so much time, okay, you need to detach this note. Okay, we need to slur this note. But they're using their ears and they can actually learn repertoire faster than what I do with my traditional students. Yeah, so I'm fortunate because I can use him as a guinea pig. I don't think he's up yet, so so I can test things with him rather than on someone else's child type of thing. But yeah, so that's one thing that I really noticed early on is that they have the articulation and they have the speed right from the beginning. Yeah, just how we approach it. Yeah. So that's how I'm approaching this one. So, but I mean, feel free to add. Yeah, if people have comments and you'd approach it differently, yeah, definitely share that.
I do find, Greg, and I've got a couple students and they want, because they want to go home and they want to play the piece. So I do use the music, and I'll put like I put clues on, I'll put finger numbers, so that they can go home and they can do something with it. Because not every family has a parent with a master's in music who can practice with them every week. And then and the parents say, I don't know what to do with this. So the kids, they want more. Like they want, okay, tell me what to do, show me on the page so I can take this home so I can remember what to do. I find myself doing that, and I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but that's what I have a couple students, they want that. Like they want something on the page that they can read and understand when they get home, because otherwise they forget the tune. I mean, they just don't remember it. So I'm running into that quite a bit.
Does anybody want to add or comment?
I mean, at this point, I'm ending up making a lot of recordings for the students, especially if we're doing it on Zoom. It's like, okay, press record. I'm going to play this for you. And that's also helpful. I mean, it's not as thorough as the example that you just showed us, but it allows them to have some reference.
Boyan, I think you were going to say something.
Well, I mean, it's an area of an interest for me because I've only done this for a couple of years now, and the kids that I started off on keyboard games are now going to book one, or there's a small group of kids who finished book one and like they want more repertoires and things like that. And so I think this will be my more bigger issue in my teaching in the next little while. What I've done so far, for example, the girl who improvised on the Sneaky Sam, and of course she has a parent at home who can help her with different things, but I think I don't think I want to limit the repertoires that my students play to just the repertoires with tonal and rhythm patterns that they are audiating and can like perform. When I did introduce any of these like rote pieces, I actually took the rote piece procedure where we will listen to it, we'll move to it, we'll talk about whether they audiate do day or do daddy, we'll wave at the end of phrases, we'll chant the rhythm patterns even if it's not in our vocabularies, we'll do that anyways, we'll kind of try the patterns. And then in terms of like figuring out the notes, because they've learned the minor melodic cadence from book one, I kind of taught them the D minor, and we made it up, D minor melodic cadence, right? And so then the only thing that we kind of did was I got them to raise their hands whenever they heard the D minor, like I'm out of la do mi. Whenever they heard it, they noticed it, and we just pointed to it in the music. Everything else was not D minor. It was just not la do mi, right? And then for those ones that weren't that I pointed on I have a annotatable picture of a keyboard, just like the keyboard map on keyboard games. And so I put little dots just the way they've been used to kind of seeing in keyboard games and music moves. And so I said, oh, it's these notes. Hey, they look like this. They share, okay, they look so squished. It's because they're like right by each other on the piano keys. So I make point of like making some connections to what they see, to what they play. And so that's my, attempt in kind of like transitioning to eventually reading. And I do think that I will probably get them doing more reading a lot earlier than what's probably recommended, because they want to play a lot. But I have no intentions to like sit down and say, hey, here's a treble clef, here's a bass clef, these are the notes. And so it's not that kind of reading, but there's more connections definitely to what's written on the page.
Oh, good.
Maybe I would just say one other thing that just having tried this a lot over the years, that when I prepare repertoire orally ahead of time, I need to plan that. So often I know what they're attracted to. Maybe I've played a few pieces for them and they just sort of say, oh, that's a big thumbs up. I love that. I love how that sounds. Once I kind of know pieces that they're attracted to or things that I really want them to play, I begin to sneak activities into a little, whatever activity time you're doing with your students. I just play it for them and then, and just have them interact with it orally. And I don't even say you're going to play this or, it's just sort of part of it. So just like you were going to learn to sing a song, if you can hear it 3 times before, and do some things with it, when you go to sing it, it's kind of like they're like, oh, we've done this before. It's sort of an ease of learning. And so when you do that with repertoire, then I occasionally find I have to do this with students that actually are the opposite of some of the students I was describing, that are they just like want to get in there and play. They don't really care about the patterns or anything. They're just like eager. I really am sneaky about that. So then I do a lot ahead of time, where they just listen to it, and very frequently, especially with a couple students, I can almost only get through maybe 2 weeks of doing that, and we sing it, and then once they know what key it is, they play it, like literally within 5 seconds, they can play the section that we've been talking about. So the preparatory activities, but again, I'm not playing it for you just so that you can hear it. I'm playing it so that it begins to, deepen in all of those questions. Like Boyan said, you're asking same or different, like are those patterns same or different, are the rhythm patterns same, does this repeat, are these phrases the same, what patterns are we using, sing it, D is do, or whatever, like just interacting with all of those things. And it actually isn't that time consuming. That's the thing, is that it goes quite quickly once you've got a kind of idea of what the student needs.
Jana, I have a quick question. When you sneak in the preparatory activities, do you tell them that you're going to be learning this piece, or kind of, no, okay.
Not always, yeah.
Yeah.
I teach twins, and so it's a balance between they're identical and they often like to have exactly the same things, like the same colors or the same whatever, but I do like them to also have some choice. So sometimes I'll just play a couple of pieces and just have them move. They're used to, doing whatever I ask them to move. And then at the end I might say, thumbs up, did you like that piece? Thumbs down, thumbs sideways, whatever, just to get an idea of who liked what, and if sometimes they like different things. So they don't even know they're gonna play it. They're just like listening to a fun piece or a fun song.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and it literally takes, and sometimes it's just the first half. Like I was introducing musette to a student and all I did was play the A section. And that, literally, I think it's 20 seconds, and just listen and move. Like put a circle in your head, or, roll your arms or whatever. And they don't know they're going to play it necessarily. As students get older, I would definitely engage them more in the learning process, but the young ones don't necessarily need to know the why, I don't think.
Thanks.
Greg, I can't hear you.
Muted.
Yeah, I do that every time. 1 year I'll learn. Actually, I don't think I ever will. Yeah, okay, thank you. I think we'll leave that topic there. There's more that we could do with it, but I think that hopefully that helps a little bit. Like I know with some pieces, I will do the bass line first. The harmonic structure. This week, I know with some students, skip to the loo, we were learning the bass line, and that's all that they learned this week on Skip to the Loo, was being able to play the chord roots and to sing the melody. Because why I want to do that is that next week, and they were disappointed because they go, well, I want to learn the melody, and so I said, well, if you want to figure it out this week on your own, feel free to do so. But my purpose of this is that then next week I'm going to do Skip to the Loo, and I think it's Sandy Lane, because they're partner songs. They have the same harmonic structure. So that's really why I really wanted to get that harmonic structure into their ears this week, so that when we do the partner song, they realize, oh, that's the same harmony. So I'll see how that goes next week when we venture into that.
Great. Can I
Okay.
just say one more thing? Because I think Rochelle just mentioned this. This got me thinking just a little bit about our RCM system. One of the challenges is that when everything's leveled, students are attempting to learn a number of pieces that are all at the same level. We hope we've got them at a level where they can do this with relative ease, but it does take time if they're playing more complicated repertoire. And I remember one of my colleagues in her doctoral program, she took a pedagogy course, and the instructor said you should always have 3 levels of repertoire going with your students, and she called it the music for today, the music for the week, and the music for the term. So the music for today, it was obviously sight reading in that case, but I've often thought about that if you can plan your repertoire, once you're in a cycle, then there isn't this sense of what am I going to practice at home, because you have different levels of learning happening. So then the new stuff that you're introducing has this breathing room to grow kind of in a natural way, so that then when they're learning it, it isn't this decoding frantic process that you gotta learn this by, next month or whatever. So I find that really helpful to think about.
That is very helpful. Yeah. And this, it feels right now a constant fight with actually the students and parents, because that leveled understanding is so ingrained. And, to give a piece that's in a lower level, that you have to have a really good reason. And to me, I wish we could just do away with these levels altogether. Like, just not deal with that, because it's so difficult to communicate that with families, and the kids think that they're somehow not where someone else is, and that whole competitive hierarchy of the pieces. I think it's so disserving. Anyway, I won't rant anymore about that, but thank you.
Yeah, like I use international music library score project lots. Because that's music that's in public domain. That's where this minuet came from. It did not come from an RCM grade 3 book. And I guess I could have handed him the Anna Magdalena notebook, and because we were doing that little prelude in C was a grade 5 level. So we're doing all different levels and bouncing around, and that's one thing that I like about the international music library score project, is because those are in free domain, and so then you can download them, print them off, and give them to students. They aren't the best editions, but at least it's notation that you can provide for them, and there's nothing written on top of what grade it is. Yeah.
Greg, could you send me the link for that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can do that. When I send out the video, why don't I stick it in there?
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you.
Okay, good.
And Michelle, I use the phrase quick study for them, because that's something that's often in festivals. You can enter a quick study class, and that's not sight reading and not repertoire. It's this sort of middle ground, and that word, the terminology for that, makes them feel like they're doing something significant but not at a lower level. Sometimes that helps.
That's very helpful too. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then with my transfer students and stuff, the folk tunes, because I do get them to learn the folk songs, and that's through audiation, and I just say, that's your ear training. And I labeled it as ear training, but really it's very audiation based, the way that I approach it. And then they have their quick studies, and then they have their repertoire. So, we get that combination going. Okay. Okay, the process of teaching improvisation. So the next question was, I'd be interested in seeing demonstrations from others about any aspect of the process of teaching improvisation. So again, I'm going to throw it open. Throw the floor open. Throw it to the floor.
Rochelle, do you have any really specific examples? I do tend in the initial experiences to separate the improvisation into rhythmic improvisation and tonal improvisation, except that tonal will also have a rhythm attached to it, but it might be a little bit simpler rhythm, right? Do you have any kind of questions specific?
You know, really, yes, lots, but maybe I'll just say one. It is the very beginnings of that. Like I've heard you give some examples of how to help kids even get started. I'm thinking tonally, especially, you know, when they've done their 1 in 5 major patterns, and to get them just tricks to get them started. Like somebody mentioned, I don't know where, like my special pattern, you know, always getting them to repeat one particular pattern instead of having to choose, and then maybe choosing 2 and then, you know, going between them, things like that, that start to get them to be able to make those choices, I guess, in easy ways. That's what I'm looking for.
Are you thinking kind of in the LSA sequence? Is that what you're thinking of mostly? So there's kind of 2 activities that happen back to back: creativity, improvisation, or creativity and improvisation. I better look and make sure I've got my terminology right. And they do those, they're 2 separate ones. And in one, you're actually not being too concerned with what they bring back to you. You're just letting them do. Ideally, if we're tonally, they're doing something tonally back, but you're not being as picky about it. And then in improvisation, you're doing a little bit more specific. So I think if you're thinking of the LSA patterns, what you do in your repertoire, in your what are referred to classroom activities, really just supports that. So I think the more, even just little short, not LSA necessarily where you feel like you're in the formal sequence, but just answering back. If you're on the strings, you can do this too. So I play this rhythm pattern and you give me something different back. And you do that frequently enough that they start to get comfortable with that sort of question and answer or call and response, where there's some little sequences that happen in book 1, Marilyn's book, where she has them play the rhythm pattern on one key, and then she asks them to answer that rhythm pattern with a different rhythm pattern, or you have the choice of doing the same or different. And those are super small incremental steps that take you to being comfortable with. You can tell when a student owns a pattern because you say something to them and they give you something really creative and different back. And that can even happen like just with buzz, right? If you want to remove the extra solfege complication, you can just start by going ba 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 ba, and they say something different back, and they always know, and they usually always at least try this once, that they can do ba 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 ba, right? Like that. I hear that often. Yeah. Does that help a little?
I'll just, before I was even introduced to MLT, I've done improvisation for quite a while with my students. And this pattern play book by Forrest Kenny was excellent. There's a pattern in there that as a teacher you play over and over, and it just gives, for the students, it just shows them which notes to play. So basically, without even explaining the key, it just, there's a picture of a keyboard of which notes of the scale to play, basically. So even if you had, I use this with my beginners right away because they could see the keyboard, and any of those notes I said will work. And then there's a, so for this teacher, there's a pattern, and then it goes into a vacation, and then back to the pattern again. And it, so there's a little bit of change in there, and just, I just created a lot of freedom for my students to say, like, you can play any of these notes, and it works wonderfully as duets. And it just really freed up my students to explore. And so I use this lots for even when I had students who had been reading music for ages and not done any improvisation. They were really scared to do it at the beginning, but it just, as if they started to play along, it just showed them that you know, just to take a risk, and there was no mistakes in whatever they played. It would sound great. So this has been a great resource for me.
Yeah, I was sad that we lost Forrest so early, but I had some really good conversations with him about sort of his process was often, and I had a few lessons with him where he kind of expected it almost to just happen. And in a way, he was right about that when you do it and you begin to get comfortable, there's a freedom that happens. Mm-hmm. But he said sometimes it doesn't happen, and that was where his question was. And so then we had some good conversations about MLT, because I just said sometimes it's really still the lack of internal sense of pulse. And I think when a student doesn't want to do something, there may be a kind of a lack of rhythmic sense. And so you can help them a lot get more comfortable with that just by beginning to get that coordination of their breathing and their rhythm. But the pattern play then offers limitations and freedom kind of imbalanced, right? So when you're given, you can only do those notes, and Marilyn does this quite a lot, like only on the black keys, or because sometimes the random key approach is too overwhelming for students. Yeah. It's like it's too much to choose from, right? And then they decide it's not the key they actually wanted, and then they change the key, and that destroys the purpose of the activity, right? Because they break up the rhythm.
Yeah, and I know even for rhythm patterns and stuff for improv, I mean, I'll start that away from the piano, you know, and I just do like, my mother, your mother lives across the street. Every night they have a chat and this is what they say. And so then I will give them a pattern, ba, 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 ba. And then they usually echo it. And then we start to say, then I say, okay, I want you to do something different. Or why don't you lead this time? So then they lead, and then I repeat what they do. And so then that's for me, that's where I begin. That improv activity is very much with rhythm patterns, and at any age. And then at the end, whenever we've gone back and forth for a few times, you know, my turn, your turn, that sort of thing, then I'll say, okay, now this time, we all do our own at the same time. So it's just massive chaos, noise, but then they know that it's fine to be doing something different than what everybody else is doing. And I'll even do that with movement as well. To me, improvisation begins with movement. That's really where I think it absolutely starts, you know. And so if we want them to feel comfortable with improvisation, we need them to feel comfortable with the movement and to be moving differently than what everyone else will. And so I always give them that opportunity when we're doing that. Of course, when you start them younger, it's a lot easier than when you get them as teenagers. But I mean, you can still do the exact same approach, just in a little upper level. I wouldn't necessarily do the little chant beforehand, but I just say we're going to have a dialogue. We're going to have a dialogue going back and forth, you know. And then, I mean, you can get upset in your rhythm patterns. Ba, 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 you know, and so we can play back and forth that way as well. So for me, that's where it begins. Yeah. I don't know if that helps. Okay. And then while we're talking about improvisation, Janet had asked, you know, I would appreciate a demonstration of how to determine the tonal patterns to focus on for an intermediate level piece, as well as how to improvise with those important notes. And I was going to email you, Jana, and say, would you want to do your arabesque Bergmuller that you did on Wednesday? Because I thought that would fit perfectly for this when I was reading the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The first thing I would say is, again, I think I shared this earlier. I got bogged down quite a lot at the beginning worrying about getting the correct patterns. Yeah. And I think if you can always ask yourself, what's the purpose of what you're doing and what student are you working with? that will help clarify what you're doing. And I think when I did arabesque, I think a lot of people were there actually, but it was just a matter of saying, here's the first pattern, second, right? So you're removing the passing tones again and just the la, do, la, and then the next one is la. You could go la, do, mi, or la, mi. I don't think it actually, it would depend on your preference. And then re, la, that's the third one, and then we know that the last one is the same. So those patterns, and so then for creating things with them, I might say, let's stick with the duple meter, do ta da ta do, 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 do ta da ta do. So then you're creating with the patterns that you have, and this might be nice to do, and then because it really outlines the D chord. So that would be. At that point, often the student is just wanting to play, right? They're just getting their fingers in. But then this is where it's kind of neat, actually, with this one, because then we go to C, and this is where I love the movable do, because the C, I didn't go this far in the webinar, but now C is do, but we can use the same syllables that we were using when we were in la, do, mi, la, re, fa, mi, re, ti, si, la, do, la. And then we've got in the, what is that? Fa, re. And then we go re, so. So we're in dominant in major tonality. And then we go back to that re, so, re. And then mi, do. And then mi, if you're going on the repeat to the ending. So it just works beautifully, actually, for same thing. So I've got two tonal patterns I would use there. So that's mi, I have to think, mi, ti, and then do, la. Right, that is in the second section, and the left hand is starting on T. So I might say C, sorry, C, T, C. And then it goes la, do, mi, C, T, C, la, do, mi, right? So that's really a quick little rundown. I'm moving fast, but so just pulling out those patterns, and I might just, as we're learning, if we're learning one section, we'll do the tonal patterns from that section, and then I might even sing the tonal patterns from the next section that week, but not expect them to learn it or play it. So then we've sung them ahead of time, maybe created a little bit with them. I think it's as simple even as once you've got that pattern. I even have my advanced students do this when they're having trouble finding. One of my students is doing the Chopin E minor waltz, and she was struggling in the middle section. There's some G sharp minor chords, and it was just something she was just not feeling comfortable getting there in time. So we just improvised with G sharp minor in the middle, and she played it in various parts so that she felt like she could play it in various inversions and improvise just with the G sharp minor. So at every level.
Thanks. Does anybody want to add anything? Okay. All right. We'll go to Lorene had a question. I found myself constantly digging around looking for repertoire, to supplement music books first and second year. How does one choose music that progresses in some kind of systematic order? Right now it feels like, hit and miss as to what I am teaching.
Jana's laughing. She's like, yeah. I think I've heard this.
I'm not saying that you're hit and miss. I understand. I still, a happy student is a motivated student, and a motivated student is usually interested in the music that they're working on, and so they're not really, unless they've got incredible structure at home, they're probably not really gonna practice effectively stuff that they don't enjoy. And so I I'm very sneaky about, like I said, preparing pieces. Like, I just think this piece is really something that this student needs technically at this moment or musically. So that happens a long time in advance. But as far as I do feel like we have quite a bit of good repertoire, but you would want to know, I think especially in triple meter, that you don't expect them to own elongation patterns too soon. And that's something that I would just watch out for in the early repertoire, because most pedagogical systems say that reading a half note and a quarter note is easy for students. And so so a lot of the early repertoire is full of that da da da, the do dee do, right? And that's not so easy for them. So I'm just really careful, probably rhythmically first, and then just what interests them. Some of them love to play whole tone, and some of them can't stand it, right? So even the Anne Crosby Starfish at Night has to be pretty carefully prepared. It's not too hard to play, but the rhythm is not so accessible. So I'm not really answering, but I think for both Greg and I, we have probably internally more lists of repertoire that to draw from, and every now and then I just put a sticky note on the front of a book and say this would be great. So like Saltwater Taffy from Janet's book is just a really great straightforward piece that you can as soon as a student is technically able, you can use that. But you'll just develop what is successful, like what do I teach that really works for a lot of students, a majority.
Yeah, because right now, like I said, it just feels random. And maybe that's just my thinking is somewhere where it doesn't belong. Maybe because we all have one foot back where we used to be, right? So I'll think, oh, this one, and then well, maybe that one, and it's like, is there any what's the end game here? Like, I need just a little bit more of a system to hang on to. And again, I'm trying to break away from that, and I understand that that's not what we want, but it just feels like there's just mishmash. Like I might teach Love Somebody, and then I might do Saltwater Tap. Like, and there's like, I don't feel like I'm building up words.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and this is where like there are lots of lists out there that give you kind of levels of things, but then also knowing, I've done this for a number of years, like a little exercise where I kind of look through what my students' strengths and weaknesses are. I don't always use the word weakness in my head, but just like play areas where they are going to need a little more assistance. And then I make quite a list of repertoire at the beginning of the year, and I spend a lot of time doing it. So I take, a week, and every day I pick 3 students, for example, and I maybe more depending on how many I have. And I just sort of sit down and I think, okay, there's these collections of music. They're at about this level. Maybe by the end of the year, they could be playing this. Maybe they're going to move slower, so we're going to move more laterally. And I thought about this week because I was doing a little mini recital for one of my colleagues, and I was reminded that music can come from, like, appropriate level pieces can come from a variety of sources. So there's you probably know the Faber. This is the Performance 3A. There's a really good piece in here that is super patterny and very easy if you're thinking in triple meter, The Fly's Adventure, if you've ever taught that. And so then I would use that for someone with quite fleet fingers and who likes to sound virtuosic, but maybe needs something not too rhythmically challenging or tonally challenging, right? So it stays pretty basic, doesn't have a lot of complication.
Okay. So it's individual then, right? And I mean, and I think, we all have this idea that we're going to spend all summer doing all this stuff. And then summer comes and it's like, yeah, close a little of the piano. But okay. So yeah. So, and I think like that's helpful because then that's a tool. That's something you can do. Yeah. Because, and with,
Yeah, my list always includes like a Canadian section. So I'm looking for repertoire that they maybe could participate in the showcase or things that they might want to play. So there's a Canadian section, and I just run down and I brainstorm. I just like look at the book and I think, oh yeah, you know what? I never thought of this piece for this student, and this is the level they're at. And then just I get out the a collection of the pieces of the books that I have, the music, look back a little bit at what I've used before.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that's something a person, I can hang on to that. Yeah. And again, it's quite individual. So I've got Mary who needs whatever Mary needs or whatever. So then you go through start to finish kind of what you're going to do. Like it, I just feel like I need a little bit more of a goal or more of an end game, and make sure that and I'm wondering, like, does each piece have to build on the one that you just did? Because, and that's a method book idea, I guess, too. You learn this at unit 3 and then unit 4 builds. Are you thinking about that or not at all?
You know what, I'm mostly thinking about what is going to be successful for them, and then levels of challenge. So do they need to be challenged? Are they a child that can handle a challenge, and how much my expectation for the amount they practice or their parental help at home, that change, it's like a huge, I can assign much more difficult pieces if I know that they have parental help, and I can work with the parent on that. But it's why even now I think I'm tired at the end of the week. I'm enjoying my teaching, but it is a lot of work because it is so individually focused. You're not able to just turn the page of your method book and then trust that at some point they're going to come out okay at the end. It's a very individual design.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think we're all in that same boat, because we have spent years really trusting the system that we have, that at the end of the day, at the end of their lessons, you can rely on Nancy and Randall Faber to have taken your students from nowhere to wherever, right? Like they've done all that, right? Yeah. So you're putting your faith in those people, really, to educate your student, I guess. Really, I guess when you think about it that way, like, you're giving away all your power to that method book. So this is just, you're just coming at it the other way, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
And I learned this. I have a wonderful colleague here in the Edmonton area, Sheila Scott. She is a fantastic teacher. She does not really have MLT incorporated. She understands it, but how she works with her students, and one of the main things that I've learned from her is how carefully she plans repertoire, and really, like, she spends more time than I would have ever thought I really needed to. So that's why I do that now, is that it just takes care and thought and planning.
I've been thinking about road repertoire a lot, road solo, sorry, as well. And then me, Boyan, and another MLT teacher, Karen, we've also discussed it a little bit, and we were thinking, because we're all going through book 1 in music moves, and we're like, oh, what is appropriate for maybe each unit and things, and so we kind of brought it up with, like, the book 1 course group that Krista is doing. So we will be having, that would be a book 1 course meeting, but a few of us will be discussing about row solos and how do you find, like, the appropriate levels. But a resource that I don't know if you guys heard about the rote repertoire project that Anne Catherine Davis is doing. So we're gathering just rote solos that people know of, and then she groups them in categories. Like, first group is, I think macro B, micro B, black keys only, fist, and just tall finger. And then so there's, like, a whole list that you can also look for. And I think this is, it might be in the music moves group. I can't remember now, but maybe look there, the rote repertoire project. Yeah, so that's something we've all been kind of thinking about too. And then lately, I think I've been inspired. So then I start composing for my students, because it seems like, because each of them well, and so we were thinking, like, maybe it's looking through each unit and I'm like, most of us, like, I'm only in music moves once, so I don't know what happens afterwards exactly. But we were thinking, maybe we have to look at, the things that technique they're learning in each unit, and what stuff they're doing in creativity and improvisation, and then can we combine that? And so at first I was thinking it more rigidly like that, which I think works well too, because then they can be applying something. For example, they're learning in popcorn, and then learning a repertoire kind of related to that, because popcorn is easy and short. But then after I gave some of my kids wrote solos that are, like, not really the same as the stuff that they're learning, they really loved it. And I was like, okay, so maybe there's two ways. There's, like, we could go level by level, but they could also learn stuff that is just, that they technically can do, and it's rhythm that they can deal with. And so maybe there is that aspect of like structure plus the not like random, but like plus the challenging, more challenging and motivational kind of aspect.
Okay, great. Thank you. We only have a couple of minutes, and we have one more question here, and it's a heavy question, a heavy-duty question, and that's about reading. I'd like someone to walk through how to teach a piece. Oh no, that's not it. I'd love to hear from others about how you progress with note reading, specifically after learning to read and write patterns. What then? Same patterns in different keys. When is rhythm pitch combined? So melodic patterns in note reading. I can share what I do if you want. I'm going to share my screen here because and these are just examples that I have created. So yeah, definitely sing the tonal patterns and chant the rhythm patterns and chant in rhythmic patterns to do that. I know that some of you have already seen all of this. So this is just worksheets that I have created. And so I approach it just like what I did with the minuet. What are our rhythm patterns? What are our melodic patterns? So we're bringing them together. And in these cases, these are patterns. These are patterns that they've probably had, but not necessarily. So we'll go through, so they know the rhythm patterns, so they can easily identify them, and I get them to mark them in. Then we go through what are our tonal patterns. And of course, we're going to chant our rhythm patterns. So we'll chant these, ba, 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 ba. I mean, establish context, and then do, day, do, day. Now, where else do we have this? Well, we have it down here. So then they literally mark it, and we do it in their lesson. And then they mark it. Now, do we have another rhythm pattern? Do, day, do. So we identify that and chant it, and then they play it just on one key on the piano. Same thing, this is the same one, like do you find it anywhere else? So we end up doing that. Then what about our tonal patterns? And so then here, so it starts with do, mi, so, and then we mark it, do you have it anywhere else? So we mark everywhere that it is. Then the same thing here, this is a different one, different tonal pattern, so we end up marking it, singing it. Same thing with these. So that we've got different ones. By the time we have done that, I will get them to go through and to sing it. And they can. Generally, they can sing it. There might be the odd one that they might have a little challenge that maybe they have to give themselves the pitch. So we'll go through and do that. We'll sing the chord roots, and then I get them to play it. So we're still looking at rhythm patterns separately and tonal patterns separately at this stage. And so I just have a series, so then we do the first one together, then they mark in their the tonal patterns. So they're going to mark those in, then they're going to copy down the rhythm patterns, and as well they're going to then write the in rhythmic of the patterns. And then I have a series of these, so then they'll do set 2, 3, and 4, and 5 at home. And then we'll come back and do other ones. So I've got a series of these. From here, once they've gone through them, then we end up going to, I end up taking them to pieces that they're going to read and to write. And some of these are, like Marilyn has had some of these in her reading and writing books. I had to adjust them a little bit because these were both in the treble clef. So then I ended up marking them down so that they're read on the grand staff. And so then again, we go through and we mark what are our patterns, what is our harmony. The patterns here, the rhythm patterns in these cases, I don't necessarily mark because this one's fairly simple. By this point, they can chant these without a problem. But what is our tonic? What is our dominant? We'll go through these. And then I am having better success with, is it Reinago? Yeah, with these little short pieces, because it's really interesting when you take a look at some of the earlier reading of like Hook and Gurlitt and all of those. They end up having both hands in the treble clef. So then I ended up transcribing it, bringing it down so that we have one hand in the bass and one in the treble. And so what I like with these is that there are on the grand staff. So that again, we go through what is our tonic, what is our dominant. So they're going to go through identify. Here, obviously, we went through what is our rhythm pattern, and we went through and looked at that. And then they practice it for the week. They take this home. Yeah, we'll work on it in the lesson, and then they will take it home and practice it. Yeah, so that's in a real nutshell. To go through the whole process, it takes about 3 hours. Yeah, to go step by step. But that's one thing that I do. From there, yeah, is starting with the reading. Is then we start doing melodic patterns. Yeah, with patterns that they know, that they're familiar with, that they've been reading individually. Yeah, and so even just look at repertoire, any repertoire that would fit that. Yeah. Does anybody have anything to add? Reading I find is a process, and it takes time, yeah, to do that, and it's over a period of time. Yeah.
It seems generally that the process is for them to look at it, analyze it, understand it, write it, sing it, then read it. Like, I think there's so many more steps in that than what traditionally it's like, well, if you know it, so here, try this, read it with your instrument. And I like that incremental approach. I think there's so much more understanding, and that's the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and they aren't decoding, and that's one of the things that I find challenging. Like with this one, okay, he's up now, so I have to talk quietly. Yes, yesterday in his lesson, I said, okay, this is number 3. You still haven't gone through and marked your tonic and dominant. And I wanted to give him number 4 to do, but I couldn't. I thought it's not going to work. It's going to be too confusing. So I said, okay, we need to go back and do number 1 now. You need to go through and circle your tonic and dominant patterns so that you know what they are. Because in number 4, they start to happen between, like it's not complete measures. They start to change partway through the measures, and then there's a subdominant thrown in there. And so I said, okay, we need to go back in order for this to be successful for when we get to number 4. Yeah. So the parent came out of me on that one. Yeah. Because the sequence, I thought to do number 4 it's not even worth it, because it's just going to be frustrating because the work hasn't been done to get us to number 4. Yeah.
So I remember when I was doing some sight reading research, there was a trend to stop calling what we do at the piano sight reading and call it sight playing. And I still think that you can find books, Sight Play with Skillful Eyes, or different, where they change the terminology. I think it still is probably something we need to explore, what exactly we mean by reading. So in the sense of sight reading for your RCM exam, the expectation is that you will be playing at this level, and you should be able to read this short example. You should be able to sit and play that short example at sight in an exam situation, rather, hopefully fluently. And I would say many teachers would say that a good majority of their students find that very difficult, to just read something they've never seen before. So I think this, talking even just about how the examination system has influenced our life, I think the whole area of reading is just a huge area, and I don't have any answers. I just think it's something we should really be thinking about. What exactly are our expectations? What do we mean by reading? And why do we want a student to just be able to sit down and read something unfamiliar? And is that even possible for most students when they're first beginning early elementary repertoire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even just to take a step back, before we even do melodic patterns, I will make sure that we're doing multiple tonal patterns and multiple rhythm patterns. So it's not just one pattern that they're reading, and that's the composite synthesis, is that they're combining a number of patterns together. So that would be the step between symbolic association and reading melodic patterns, would definitely be to make sure that you're reading multiple patterns. Yeah. And that they're able to do that. And with the sheets that I've used, yeah, they're able to do that. Yeah. Okay, our time always goes by so fast.
Can I just ask a question? I think, Dreama, maybe you mentioned a group that you're putting together some repertoire lists or something, and others of you have done a lot of work. I don't primarily teach piano. I do very limited, and some of my violin students are wanting me to do both, which is kind of fun. However, is there, like, I know some MLT people have like Google Sheets lists where you can just add stuff. I don't know if that's something that is already present, or if that's something that you would consider, like at different levels, just having something joint where you can add pieces that you found work well for a majority of students.
So with the row repertoire project that I mentioned, those are by categories. And then some of us are part of Krista's book 1 course, the Music Moves. And so that question was raised by a few of us. And so we're having a meeting on Monday to discuss, like, is it possible to do level projects? And then I think when I was meeting with some other teachers, Boyan and Karen, we were thinking, what if we also got MLT teachers to compose pieces and then put them by levels? So that hasn't started yet, but that's just some ideas. So maybe I would first, are you in the Music Moves group?
Facebook group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you might find the rote repertoire project, or I can email the links to you. So what happens is every month, Anne Catherine, she'll come up with a category, and then all teachers will pull in that Facebook page, and then she puts together the pieces, and those are like categorized. And so if you ever need pieces, you're like, oh, I need like triple meter, macro micro B with elongation or something like that, then it's easy to maybe look for some of those and find them. Yeah, so that one I can definitely maybe. Greg, do you have like links for that?
That's a good question. If you want to send it to me, then when I upload the video and send that notice out, then I can include it.
Okay. So I'll just type that title in case you want to look for it first, and then I'll see if. So in the row repertoire project, it's a separate Facebook group, and then every month she'll start an event, and that month will be a certain category of the items that we're looking for in pieces, and then people will chip in their ideas and like of repertoire they know.
I could share my screen really quick because I have the page open. I don't know if Greg gives me in.
Yeah, you should be able to, because I had to do it to share my iPad.
Yeah. So this is the rote repertoire project, and then there's just lots of discussions and things. So she'll talk about the meeting, or there's the May event. So that's just what it looks like there.
Oh, good.
And so for that one, Anne did put together initially a Google Sheets like document having like the like all the details of the piece, and then composer and which book it's from, that sort of thing.
And maybe for you as a violin teacher, it's almost more thinking about, I guess I categorize a lot in as I'm looking at a piece, like it's kind of just like you would do in a pedagogy project, right? Like, what is the technique involved? What are the musical features? And then from an MLT perspective, we're always thinking, what is the rhythm? What is the tonal structure of the piece. How many patterns? Are they repeated? Is there too much diversity, right? Is it balanced between same and different?
Please share what it is. So she started this sheet, and then so it has different contents, and then so it's open for everyone to just download, and then each month that you can add in your own things. And so like the first month it's like these different it has all the pieces and all that kind of stuff.
Great. Oh, good. Well, thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is June 18th, Friday, June 18th, and we asked Chris Azra if he would be willing to do a workshop for us, and he said yes, so we picked this date since we kind of all meet anyways. If you can't make it, I will be recording it and then making it available for about a month, and it'll be listed privately. I'll put it on a website, on a web page that only can be accessed if you have the link with it. And but he's going to talk to us about what pieces, like more kind of what we were talking about today, some of the more higher end pieces away from folk songs, and for developing our students' audiation and to kind of help them with that. Yeah, Jana and I, and even Laurel, we took a course with him last summer, a 2-week course. We audited his course at Eastman, which was great to do. And so we asked if he would kind of bring a little bit of that into 90 minutes of a workshop. So he'll touch on that. Yeah, he's excited to do it for us. And I'm hoping, since I'm not gone camping this weekend, to get some of that advertising and to get some of that a little bit more ready, and then I'll send it out, to everyone. Yeah, good. Well, thank you, everyone, for your time this morning. I just feel like we could just go all day with these, which are great. But I definitely appreciate learning with all of you, that's for sure. Yeah.
Thanks so much for organizing and for all of your feedback.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. Okay, we'll see you guys in a month, if not before.